Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over a big rainstorm over the east, which is going to be taking place especially for next week, and especially for this weekend and into early next week. So we're going to be covering that, showing you how much rainfall to expect, and in the beginning of the video we're also going to be going over the snowfall reports that we saw from New England, especially northern New England, and then also from the Rockies and the Midwest. Because we had two different little areas of snow that happened over the past 3 days. So let's start off with your current National Weather Service page. As you can see, we have some flood watches up in northeastern California. We have some frost advisories in Kansas and Nebraska, with some freeze watches in that light blue for a little bit of Kansas, Nebraska, and Colorado. We have wind advisories up for parts of Oregon and California, and other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings. If you have any questions or comments, by the way, you can just leave them down below, and I'll be responding within a couple of hours of you posting them. So, talking about the extremes from yesterday, we had a high temperature of 100 degrees in Rio Grande Village, Texas. Low temperature of just 2 degrees in Bodie, California. The highest rainfall report was in Eagle Valley, Nevada, where they got 1.75 inches of rain, so relatively over much of the United States. It was actually fairly dry yesterday. And if we look at the snowfall reports, it was 14 miles southwest of Fort Washakie, Wyoming, where they got 19 inches of snowfall yesterday. So here's a look at that snowfall map. You can see that anywhere in that yellow color, that's where you're above 6 inches of snow. And I believe that in that red color, that's 18 plus. Actually, yeah, that would be 18 plus inches of snow. So you're looking at a fairly good chunk of, especially this little mountain range in Wyoming. It's a slightly elevated area compared to the surrounding areas, and they saw upwards of 12 to 18 inches of snowfall, and there were even a few spots that were over that amount. In Nevada, it was mostly scattered across the northern part of the state in the Ruby Mountains, but in terms of low elevation snowfall, it wasn't really that common. If you look up into the Sierra Nevadas, you're looking at right around 2 to 6 inches of snow, and as you get up into northern California, that's where we get some of our 6+ inch amounts. Also up near Utah, especially northern Utah, we had 6 to 10 inch amounts over a good portion of that area. And then you also don't want to forget about South Dakota and northwestern Nebraska, because they also saw some snowfall, especially around the Black Hills, where you saw up to close to 6 inches of snow in some of those spots. But even the surrounding areas, you at least got some amount of snow, maybe an inch or two, or even a couple more than that in some of these spots. So also for New England, we did see some of our first snow of the season, but it was very high elevation snowfall. It was up in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Possibly there could have been some snow in some of the highest peaks of northern Vermont, as well as maybe northernmost New Hampshire, although we really can't verify whether that's true or not. We're just looking based on temperature maps on the possibility of that occurring. So we could have seen maybe a light dusting in parts of northern Vermont. We do know, or we're at least very certain, that there was some snow up into the central part of New Hampshire in the White Mountains, in and around Mount Washington. We saw closer to an inch or two at the highest peaks. So when you're getting up 6,000 feet up or more, you maybe saw closer to maybe 2 or 3 inches of snow. But overall, it was a very minor event. It's really just for those highest elevations in New England, and really nothing that was too crazy there. So let's start talking about the rainstorm in the eastern United States. It's going to start off on Sunday morning. So we have your low pressure system up into Kansas. We have rain spreading from Colorado all the way to Kentucky. So a good portion of the central United States dealing with some rainfall. We could definitely have some convective activity along with this. That is certainly a possibility. And one more thing that I want to mention is that if you live in the Central Plains, it will be quite windy, especially for Monday and Tuesday. So it will be windy, and it will also be a little bit colder than normal. So especially if you live in the Northern Plains. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind. Also for the West, especially the Northwest, it'll be extremely windy, especially right along the beaches. And then we're going to have a lot of rain also for these areas. Highest elevations could, of course, see that come down in the form of snowfall. But for the majority of these areas, you're going to get a ton of rain. It should help out with some drought issues, but of course, you don't want all of the rain to come down at once. So that, of course, could cause some issues. So those two systems is really what we're going to track here, but we're going to keep most of our attention on this one right over here. So this is by Sunday morning. Here's by Sunday night. So this is the 24th into the 25th. And you can see that we have some more of that rain expanding along the central United States. We have the low pressure center right over Kansas City by that point, according to the European model. We do have some moderate, maybe heavy rain mixed in there. Now, this is a sign of some convective activity. You can see that we do have those little pockets of heavier rain scattered in and about. And if you were to look at the Cape maps or anything in terms of the dew points, the high temperatures, everything would lead you to believe that we could see some severe weather here, especially in the pocket right ahead of the storm. We have elevated temperatures that'll get quite high up there, maybe even into the 70s or 80s right ahead of the system. So within that little pocket right there, you'll have elevated Cape, humidity, dew points, and temperatures, really all the ingredients needed for some severe weather. So I would not be surprised if on the eastern side of this storm we do see some severe weather, especially for areas that live west of the Appalachians. So once you get east of the Appalachians, it's mainly going to become a plain rain, just because the ingredients will not be there. But especially if you live west of there into areas like the Tennessee Valley, the Mississippi River Valley, those areas could definitely get in on some of the rain. If we move this on to Monday morning, you can see that the low pressure center is now over Illinois, according to the Euro model. We have some strong winds around the center of the storm, especially for the lower Great Lakes. You could be gusting up near the 30 miles per hour at times. If we look at this for Monday night into Tuesday morning, you can see that we have that low pressure center into Indiana. We have rain spreading across the Ohio Valley, Tennessee Valley, and even into parts of the southeast. So these areas are getting a good thumping of rainfall. Now, there is something interesting that's going to happen. We have your high pressure center, which is right over here by this point. So this is bringing in a cold northwesterly breeze for much of the Great Lakes and the Northeast. That's also going to push this storm to the south, but it's not going to have anywhere to go. So it's just going to kind of sit here over coastal Virginia and North Carolina, and it's actually going to start to strengthen. So it's going to take a little bit of a peculiar turn over the next few days. Here's that system. This is by Tuesday morning. So we have your first system right here, and now we're seeing a transfer of energy to the second one, which is over eastern North Carolina and eastern Virginia. That one starts to take over. So we still have the remnants of that earlier system, of the first system, which started out in Kansas and moved all the way into Indiana and Ohio. But now we have another one which is forming off of the Carolina coast, and that one is actually going to be a little bit stronger. So we could be dealing with some prolonged heavy rain over these areas. This would be by Tuesday night of next week. So it is a fairly far out there. We're looking at 5 or 6 days in advance, but this has been well documented by most models, so we're not going to go too far out. This is the last frame that we actually look at, but you can see that we have that low pressure system into the coastal part of North Carolina. We have heavier rain on the northern side of that, so that would be impacting areas like Virginia Beach and parts of the Delmarva. So it would be some of those areas in the mid-Atlantic who would be getting most of that rain. You would have a brisk easterly wind coming onshore or actually that would be a northwesterly wind coming out of Canada, and then eventually interacting with that storm in parts of the mid-Atlantic. So this is going to be an interesting setup. At the same time, we're actually going to have a rather chilly trough into the northeast. So these two systems are going to be interacting. This high pressure to the north, which is allowing this trough of cold air to develop, and then just to the south of there is where we're going to have your low pressure system, which is going to definitely play a big role in terms of precipitation. You also want to pay attention to the possibility of some more rain coming in by Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of next week. This line of rain will be heading to the east, but we don't have too many details on that just yet. So here's a look at the total rainfall map over the next 7 days, which this goes through Wednesday morning of next week. And you can see that we have tons and tons of rain along the west coast. So if you live along that area from basically western Washington through western and actually most of Oregon, and then also into northern California, everywhere there is getting at least 2 inches of rain, and for many areas you're looking at 4 to even 6 inches of rain, and I wouldn't even rule out that some of those elevated spots, which can get a little bit more rainfall than the lower lying areas, could get up above 10 or 15 inches of rain. So mudslides are definitely a possibility, especially over the areas that are under burn scars. So that's something that you want to pay attention to. And of course, I'm not aware of exactly where those burn scars are and where these areas are most vulnerable to those mudslides, but I'm sure if you live in one of those areas that's vulnerable to mudslides and things like that, that you would of course be aware of that. And if you're not, then just kind of keep an eye out and keep an ear out for any local warnings that you get from your officials or just from any weather source in your area. For the one in the east, you can see that we're looking at a general 1 to 3 inches of rain. Again, it's going to be more scattered as you get out into the central United States because it's going to be more in the way of thunderstorm activity, especially from Illinois on westward. Once you get east of there, it does start to break up a little bit. You have some rain, fairly heavy at times, into North Carolina and Virginia. We're looking at 3 to 4 inches of rain for many of those spots. And that's, of course, if the European model is correct. And we, of course, don't know that for certain. Now, let's take a look at why this is happening. Looking at the upper air map, you can see that we have our trough into Missouri and Illinois as we get to about Monday morning. So here's your low pressure system by this point. Now, this is the big ridge which is over eastern Canada that's kind of providing the block to this storm. And that's what's providing all of that cold air as well, because it brings in that flow in from Canada, somewhat like this, into the Great Lakes and the Northeast. So if you move this on to Tuesday morning, you have a trough centered over the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast. Your actual low pressure system is by this point in the process of transferring from Indiana and Ohio over to coastal Carolina, so coastal North Carolina. So as that's happening, it will maybe break up for a couple hours, but once this coastal system right here starts to develop a little bit more, then you're really going to get into the heat of the rain by that point. That high pressure system is still all the way up in eastern Canada, and it's very, very large. It's not really going to move too much over the next week. You can see why we're getting all that rain into the west as well. You have a huge trough into that area, and so that's providing a lot of cold air, but also a lot of precipitation. You can see where the winds are coming out of. They're coming straight out of the west. So we have a we have a jet stream coming straight out of the west right onto the west coast, which typically we see more of a broken up, wavy type of jet stream out in the Pacific, but we have a fire hose which is going straight from Hawaii all the way to the west coast, and that's what's providing all that rain. Most of that rain is not coming in the form of one organized system. It's mainly just a couple rounds of very, very heavy precipitation coming in off the Pacific Ocean. So that's something that's going to be very, very prevalent if you live in the Northwest over the next couple of days. And then if we move this on to Monday, here's that system that's going to start up into the Central Plains and kind of restart this whole pattern once again. You can see the high pressure moves a little bit further to the east, and then we have this trough into parts of the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast, which is providing some of that precipitation. Now, again, you're looking at this and you're seeing the red and orange colors, but that's not really indicating the warmer temperatures. The warmer temperatures are still going to be right in here, right ahead and in between both of these systems, but you can see that based on these lines on the map right here that we do have somewhat of a trough into the northeast and mid-Atlantic by this point. So it may look like it's mild in these spots, but it's really not going to be. It's going to you're going to have low temperatures into the 30s, especially if you live a little bit inland of the coast for most of these areas for a majority of this upcoming week. So it's really not going to be warm at all in these spots. You'll maybe get a 1 or 2 day break, then you'll get some more rain, and then after the rain it'll go back to a cold pattern. So it's going to be one of those types of months and weeks, especially as we go through November. I think we're going to start to go into a bit of a chillier pattern, but that's also going to come with the downside of seeing more rain, which I know a lot of people don't want rain. I certainly don't like rain too much because it means that you kind of have to cancel all your outdoor plans for that day. So it looks like you're going definitely into a more rainy pattern, and with that rainy pattern, it's going to actually turn quite a bit colder. So once we get into late November, who knows, maybe some of that rain will switch over to snow. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. It was a bit of a longer one because we did have a lot to talk about, especially trying to break down why those two systems are moving into the United States. I'm not sure what tomorrow's video will be about. I'm assuming either the colder air for November, or it'll either be that or it'll be this rainstorm right here. So there's a couple options. There isn't a ton to talk about in terms of actual storms right now, or at least in the near future, in the next 3 or 4 days, but you go 4 or 5 days out and there's plenty more to talk about, definitely. So we'll be keeping you updated on this storm. If you have any questions or comments, just leave a comment down below and I'll be responding within a couple hours of you posting that. If you have any weather photos that you personally have taken and that you want to send in to the channel to possibly be featured on a video, then send that into the email address which is in the description down below. And if you have any special requests or anything that you want to share privately with me, then my email address in the bottom of the description would be where to find me and where to contact me. But if it's anything just random or weather related, I would prefer that you put it in the comment section because I check that much more regularly than my email. So again, that is going to wrap it up, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.